Right, we're here in Harare following the ICC Cricket World Cup qualifiers very closely for those Moonda and myself. West Indies v Scotland, Super 6 game. And shall we start by stating the obvious for those? West Indies can ill afford to drop any more points. They anyway need some luck with either Zimbabwe or Sri Lanka dropping some points, but they have to get everything right, starting with Scotland tomorrow. And can they respond after the manner in which they went down? Super over against Netherlands?
Look, I mean, they also can't afford to drop any more catches because that has really been a sticking point for them.
Yep.
They've been messy in the field. We saw against the Dutch, they let so many ones become twos. That their groundwork is a little bit slow and they're putting down some very easy chances.
Yep.
So the first thing they can't drop is catches. And then I also think they need to get themselves up a little bit because they do seem a little down. Again, against the Dutch, there was a point in that innings, probably at about over 42, the shoulders slumped, the double teapot was out, the hands were on the hips, and it just looked as though they knew they're in some serious trouble. So there's a few things that need to happen. Selection-wise, Kyle Mayers, they'll be hoping is fit. He had a hamstring injury. They've dropped Rovman Powell, and he didn't have a good tournament.
He's vice captain, isn't
He's the vice captain, and I mean, he's a big hitter. He was excellent in South Africa in the T20 series. So whether they want to bring him back, I think will depend on balance of the side. If Mayers is fit, Romario Shepherd drops out, Rovman Powell maybe comes back in. They've also ruled Yannick Correa out. He's got that shame, that facial injury, which is not pleasant at all. So Kevin Sinclair is coming in as a replacement. I don't think he'll be slotted in straight away. Shea Hope has been carrying the batting. He needs support. They need to, when a team scores 374, the last thing you want to say is they need to score more runs. But to be honest, they needed 420 in that match.
Wow. Okay.
And Scotland are on the up, right? They've beaten teams that maybe we didn't think they'd beat, like Ireland in that amazing chase.
They gave Sri Lanka a real scare in the last game. And they have fond recent memories of beating the West Indies in a World Cup, in the T20 World Cup last year. Yeah. So you sense that they have it in them to bounce back, or do you think they've checked out? Because they obviously know the format. They've not carried any points to Super Sixes. Do you sense we could see
Look, I think things are going to have to go their way for them to get through. I think the magnitude of a two-time champion missing out on a World Cup is maybe starting to sink in. And especially from Darren Sammy, who's new in the job, there is that sense that if we can't get this right, and maybe we haven't got it right, there's going to be a big problem here. There is a big problem here. So I think they understand the urgency, but I think the damage is done because to drop points against Zimbabwe, drop points against Netherlands, and then have to hope that something goes your way, it's not going to rain. So
And let me just add to that perhaps as a West Indian fan, you're thinking, right, if we can get the 6 points here, we're hoping Sri Lanka will lose to West Indies then in that case, and maybe Zimbabwe will, just fall apart at some point. But I think that they're going to have a really tough job of this in the first game itself, because I was following Scotland closely in Bulawayo. They are playing their highest standard of cricket. And that is in spite of the team coming into the tournament with stomach bugs. A number of them were ruled out. George Munsey, senior player for them, didn't even make it to the ground after the first game, that thrilling win over Ireland. He's fit and back, and I hope he makes the 11 because they just need that one experienced batter. That's what they missed against Sri Lanka. They bowled them out for 245. Imagine Scotland beating Sri Lanka on their way to the Super Sixes. You're looking at a completely different set of equations. So do not take Scotland lightly. In Chris Soule, I think they have a proper fast bowler. And we've seen Firdose in Harare and Bulawayo. The first half hour, 1 hour, fast bowlers can have a serious say. Chris Soule looks a proper international standard fast bowler, bowling well with the new ball and old. And in Brandon McMullen, they've got a guy who I'd like to describe as he bowls like Bhuvaneshwar Kumar and he bats like Mitchell Marsh. It's not a bad combination. He's young, takes the new ball and swings it, bats 3 and loves hitting straight down the ground. So I genuinely think there is enough quality in this Scotland attack. Everyone knows about Mark Watt, Wiley's spinners. Spinners tend to play their role in the middle. So the West Indies are not going to get an easy game here. This is not going to be, they've had no easy games. But I genuinely think it will not surprise me if Scotland actually perhaps put the final nail in the coffin and even beat the West Indies. The only thing is they've not played at Harare Sports Club. So maybe the West Indies have a better understanding of a new ground, etc., etc. But I don't think this is going to be an easy game at all.
Yeah, and the other thing for Scotland is that there's so much for them to play for. They were here in 2018. They missed out on the World Cup because of, I suppose, what we might say are a couple of decisions that could have gone their way and didn't. And they were devastated at the time. So was Zimbabwe, who also missed out for similar reasons, and that rain out against the UAE.
No rain this time, and DRS this time.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're going to see DRS
Yeah.
for the first time up in Harare. We've seen it in the Super 6. It's in action in Bulawayo at the moment. So everything is set for Scotland to go through. And if they are to beat West Indies, I think the follow-up, the wash-up from West Indies not making it is going to be massive.
Yeah.
I really think it's not something we've seen, right? A champion missing out on a World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, even the win may not be enough, but I think they'll have to really play their best cricket, which I'm not seeing from the West Indies. So it would not surprise me if we get an even sadder story, if I could say that, from the West Indies.
Yeah,
So I'm backing Scotland to actually do the job.
Oh, my word. Okay, well, you heard it here. But in terms of not playing their best cricket, I think that has been the sum up of what we've seen from West Indies so far. In fits and starts, they've come right. And there are a few people who've put in some good performances. Alzari Joseph, I think, will really want to pick himself up. He was pretty expensive against the Dutch, although he took his 100th ODI wicket there. So it's on him, it's on a bit of Jason Holder, and somebody from the batting lineup besides Shea Hope needs to get it together. Otherwise, it's going to be a World Cup most likely without the West Indies.